Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this afternoon CTD Sharing Series workshop, Introduction to Drones for Conservation Districts. We're joined today by Seth Flanders, Brent Dixon, and Andrew Fhay, who have all graciously agreed to share their knowledge and experiences with owning and operating drones for their districts. Before we get started, though, I have just a couple of things. First, a little advertising. The CTD hosts 2 different webinar series each month. First Tuesday is a sharing series topic where you can hear about programs and projects from your fellow district staff and take back some ideas to hopefully implement at your own district. And then on the 3rd Thursday of the month, we hold a training series webinar where you'll find some more technical training topics. And so a couple of specific mentions. Thursday the 18th of this month, we'll hold a training with Marty Cheney of NRCS on using the waste calc spreadsheet and how to interpret your results. And then an upcoming sharing series webinar is going to feature the work that Whatcom CD conducted with developing 2 NRCS National Water Quality Initiative watershed assessments. So you can tune in there to learn about the watershed assessment process, how to interpret your outcomes, and then ways to focus your planning and outreach efforts for your greatest impact. And you can always find all of the upcoming webinars on the CTD website at wactd.org. Also, just really quick, a couple of housekeeping items with you. We're in this webinar style meeting today, and so we'll keep everyone muted from our side until the end of the presentation. We do welcome your questions though, and you can them in the questions box at any time, and if we can, we'll take a couple of pauses through the presentation to check in with you and answer any questions. So go ahead and put them in as they come up for you. And then just to make sure that you can all hear us and see the screens, if I could get 1 or 2 folks to just enter a quick hello into the questions box, I can make sure that we have everything working properly here. All right, thanks. That's perfect. Also, at the end of our presentation, we'll open the floor up if you want to ask your questions directly. So if that's an easier option, just to speak your question, you can click on the little raise hand icon and I will unmute you so that you can just ask directly. But remember that you will also need to unmute yourself before we'll be able to hear you. So I think that's all from me. If you're having any technical issues, just please feel free to put it in the questions box and we'll try to troubleshoot with you the best that we can. But other than that, thank you all again for tuning in today, and I'm going to turn it over to Seth, who is going to get us started. So Seth should be over to you now.
Perfect. Let's see here. All right, everyone, I believe this is the correct screen for everyone to be able to see. Welcome to the Introduction to Drones for Conservation Districts. My name is Seth Flanders, and we will be followed by Brent Dixon, and then featuring Andrew Fhay. It kind of looks like he's going to come on and sing a couple lyrics for us, but that'll be up to him to decide. So I've been doing drones for the Conservation District at Spokane Conservation District since about 2017. I just upped my most recent pilot's license, so that was kind of my 4-year anniversary of flying drones for a Conservation District. And today we're going to be going over quite a bit of material. This material is more meant to make sure that you're on the right track. Sometimes I find that it's difficult to know what questions to ask until you've been exposed to the material. So if you recognize something, or better yet, don't recognize something, maybe that's a question that you should be able to ask. So again, we're going to go through a lot of material today, and hopefully this will be posted so that people can go back and absolutely use myself, Brent, and Andrew as resources moving forward as you are looking into drones for yourself. So overview of material for today, we're going to go over the kind of basic drone technology uses. We're going to go over part 107 licensing, drone aircraft, cameras and sensors, because you can fly something through the air, but if you can't capture something on the ground, it's just a toy. And additional costs, maybe some of the things that we forget to include because we're so focused on flying something through the air. So to start off, drone technology uses. At STD, we use our drones a lot for aerial photography and videography. We use it to show, this is a picture of direct seeding operation in Spangle, Washington, and being able to promote some of the practices that our landowners are doing. This is an example of one of our buffers that got put in out in Reardon, and being able to see that from high off the ground is really helpful to kind of get the scale of how much is being done. This is one of our projects, River Mile 17, where we're doing bank stabilization, and we're really able to capture the whole project at the same time. We also do data collection and analysis. So this is a DMS surface model, or DSM surface model of that same project that you just saw. We are also using multispectral. It comes out black and white, but you can analyze it in color. And then we're also using thermal, where right here, dark is going to be your cooler spots, white is going to be your lighter spots, and we're measuring different stream temperatures and areas around riparian areas. You can also use it for forestry and wildfire management. We have not done that as much. We've done a little bit of forestry, but I do know that these are very common uses of drone technology. The reason why you don't want to do during wildfire management is because you don't want to interfere with other aircraft that could be going through to put out fires. All right, Part 107 drone licensing. So the Part 107 is by the Federal Aviation Association, and it is the license that allows you to operate legally. So there are some basic rules that everyone flying a drone gets to do, and that's you have to register your drone for $5. Now, I always put this in, it seems kind of straightforward, but there's a lot of agencies and a lot of groups out there that are charging more money to register your drone for you. It shouldn't cost more than $5. It's through the FAA, it's through their website. Anything greater than $5 is a scam. And so I just want to give that information to everyone. You're supposed to stay below 400 feet above ground limit. That's what AGL stands for. Don't fly above crowds or people. Stay 5 miles away from airports. Keep your drone in your line of sight and stay updated on waivers and rules. So all of those are general. There are specific elements to that 400 feet rule. You can fly within 5 miles, but you have to know the rules to that. And then there are now waivers about flying over crowds and people. That's part of the staying updated on waivers and rules, but these are kind of some of the general rules to abide by. Now, you as a conservation district should get your 107 license. Now, you can technically get a certificate of authorization that takes multiple months, lots of paperwork. I'm not exactly sure how to get it, but technically as a government agency, you can operate out of that, but it would be much more cost efficient. And a lot of people have come before you and just gotten the 107 license. You also need a 107 license if you're going to do any commercial operation. So that includes any compensation. A lot of landowners ask, can I just fly my drone on my property? And it's like, yes, but the second that it helps you in your operation, you technically need a 107. Or if you're getting paid by the conservation district to take a drone off of the ground, that is technically compensation. So you are getting paid to fly the drone. So you need your 107. Emergency responders need a 107 pilot's license. It costs about $150 and you renew every 2 years. Cool thing is that one of the rules just came out. That's a one-time payment. We should be renewing every 2 years on a free test program. So that was a new rule. It should be enacted within 60 days. But the FAA just came out with that. Normally, you would have to retake the test every 2 years and pay that same amount of money. All right, some study material for you. This is a great book, this remote pilot test prep book. I've used the 2017 edition and it's great. There's the physical book, and then you can also take classes at your local flight schools, which are very helpful if you're an in-class learner. There's also lots of online material. A great free one that Brent told me about was this UAV coach, drone training, news and free resources for land surveyors and mappers. It's a lot of free material. You can find it out there. It's available. Don't go breaking the bank to learn this material. It's there for you. All right, so that's kind of the 107. You need to get it, study hard, you'll be fine. Okay, now drone aircraft. When we start talking about the types of drones that you want to fly, there are basically two categories that I like to break it down into. We have the fixed wing model, and then we have the copter model. And so the fixed wing model is going to allow you to do large swaths of land, whereas the copter model is going to be able to be a lot more precise. It's going to be able to hover over one spot for an extended period of time. So those are kind of the two main categories. We at SCD, we chose two copter style drones, and we chose the Phantom 4 and the Matrice 600 Pro. Now, again, we bought these in 2017. We didn't have a large market of drones to be able to choose from. So these were the two drones that suited our values and what we wanted to use them for. So we'll go into that right now. So for the Phantom 4, we got it for project monitoring, long-term aerial monitoring, and in use with a combination of other research and programs. We really wanted to get that extra view of, you know, we have those ground control points, but we also wanted to have aerial control points to be able to fly grid patterns and create orthomosaic maps. We want to be able to free fly and be able to take good videos of our projects and be able to promote ourselves with that. We want to be able to do our custom flights. Every single site is going to be different, and this small drone is very versatile. You get to program exactly what goes into it, and you can take it with you. It's pretty compactable, and we use it for a vast number of projects. And one of the things that we found being the most beneficial piece is that it created the middle zone from the ground to the satellite. So this is a picture of a project that we had done. This is Bear Creek, and every year we go out there and we take pictures at this 45-degree angle of how this is changing over time. And so we can get these satellite views, but then to be able to actually see this whole project in one picture and not just ground control points has been very beneficial to showing the progression of these conservation efforts over time. We use it for a lot of promotional material. A lot of times the stuff that we're working on is out in remote places, and we want to be able to show the public that these large scale efforts and these large scale programs are being enacted in their communities. So we use drones a lot to be able to show the big picture. We also got the Matrice 600 Pro. At the time, this was one of the only drones that could actually carry multiple cameras. So it was a hexacopter. We liked the fact that it was wind resistant, up to 40 miles per hour. It had triangulating GPS accuracy. And so it had 3 sensors on the top that work independently of each other. The average flight time was 27 minutes. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but 4 years ago, 27 minutes was top of the line. I know now they're pushing 42, 50 minutes, but 4 years ago, this was the best drone that you can get. And then thermal imaging and multispectral capabilities that we put on the drone at the same time to be able to fly the same grid at once. So those are kind of the elements of the drone technology. What are you going to physically fly? Now, you can fly the drone through the air, but what are you going to attach to it? So now we're going to talk about the sensors that you want to attach to your drone. Now, the first one that most people are going to use 90% of the time is just your standard digital camera. This is going to be your way of just showing, hey, this is what's happening on the ground. It's going to be what you use for your promotional material and what you're going to use for aerial photography to time lapse your projects. So these cameras, you get to choose the resolution. Do you want 4K, 6K, 8K video resolution? How many megapixels do you want per picture? Lens, are you wanting more of a fisheye GoPro look, or are you wanting more of a wide angle, kind of more cinematic look? Magnification. So a lot of times there's digital zoom, but there are also physical lenses that allow 30 magnification zoom. Most people, I think, would actually like the physical zoom feature of a lot of drones that are on the market today, so that they can see things from far away without necessarily having to fly super close to them. Now, if you're going to be doing a lot of mapping, you need to start paying attention to your sensor size. Is it a 1/4 inch sensor, 1/2 inch sensor, 1 inch sensor? This is the amount of light that comes in and actually gets captured on the sensor. Most of the time, you can have a really high resolution, camera on your phone, but it only has a 1/4 inch sensor. You get more data and more real data the larger your sensor size. And then, are you going to want a rolling shutter or a mechanical shutter? A rolling shutter is just fine if you're just taking pictures on a normal day, but if you're wanting mapping and to have a picture move and have your drone be moving quickly through space and time, you need a mechanical shutter to be able to make sure that picture is a crisp, clean picture when taken. And so these are just some of the different parameters that you get to ask questions. What do we want in our camera? And then start looking for the drone that carries it. So this is an example of a 1/4 inch sensor on a DJI Mavic Air. We also have this new, an American-made company, the Evo series, which has 8K drones and actually 8K thermal combined and 6K drone technology. The only thing with this, even though it's such high resolution, is that these are rolling shutters. So this is perfect if you're just wanting some aerial photography, but these are not your ideal mapping drones, even though they have such high resolution. Then you also have the Mavic series from DJI. The one on the left is going to be your zoom. It physically has lenses that move to keep your resolution really high when zooming in. And then the one on the right is going to have a 1 inch sensor, and these can fit inside any small messenger bag or small backpack very easily and are very transportable. Okay, so those are your digital cameras. A lot of people are wanting to move into the multispectral range, and the multispectral camera department, I think, is largely influenced, and the market is really honed in, especially in the Pacific Northwest, and that I've kind of seen by the MicaSense Red Edge camera system. So I'm really going to be promoting them a lot, mostly because that's what I know most about. But I believe that there are some other multispectral cameras that are out there. This is just the one that I see everyone using, both from literature to just on the ground application. So multispectral can measure plant health, plant vigor, and the productivity before harvest. It can also help measure, where is the stress happening on your plants in ways that maybe you can't visually see. And there are multiple types of multispectral lenses. You have a one lens where it's going to just try and pull out different wavelengths from your normal pictures. You have separate lenses, which are going to be the two on the right. And then you have resolutions. So there's a Parrot Sequoia one on the top right. That one has about 2/3 the resolution as the MicaSense Red Edge that you see in the middle. But it's so much smaller, you can't tell by the picture. It can fit on nearly any drone, and particularly very small drones. So that's a very large advantage if you're wanting to keep your operation within like a handheld size. Now, the MicaSense Red Edge is a pretty big sensor. However, every couple years they come out with a new version. So they came out with the Red Edge M, same exact sensor, just smaller. Then they came out with the Red Edge MX. They changed the DSLR light sensor on the top of the camera, and so that's what you see. And then they have the Ultim, which means this actually takes a thermal band picture with your other multispectral bands. And then they have the Red Edge MX Blue series, where you can put two of these, a Red Edge Blue and a Red Edge Red, next to each other, and you get dual banding multispectral. So they're looking at very, very intricate differences within 10 wavelengths. And so this is going to be very important if you're wanting to start doing research and going to be looking at very specific small changes. And then we have our thermal cameras. So our thermal cameras, there are quite a few to choose from. They have a very broad spectrum of uses, but also you got to know what you're wanting to use it for. So a lot of times we use them for water retention, detecting hotspots in fields, groundwater research, stream assessments, and post-wildfire management. So, if you want to look for hotspots in post-wildfire zones, thermal imaging could be a very beneficial tool. Now, when you look for thermal imaging, you're going to see sometimes it has an R and sometimes it doesn't. Radiometric means that it's for data. It's been calibrated. Most of them that are coming out nowadays are all radiometric, but just make sure if that's what you're wanting to use it for is data. You got to look for the lens. What's your focal view that you want? Do you want it to see a whole wide angle, or do you want it to be able to focus in a little bit tighter? Do you want it at 9 or 30 hertz? Basically, do you want to be able to take live video with this? And then resolution. Your resolution is going to almost be double in price the higher resolution that you get. And these are all the questions that you get to ask on, do I need thermal? Because thermal is quite expensive to get into. And so if you don't need thermal, but would like it maybe as part of your multispectral setup, I would highly suggest getting the multispectral camera with a thermal band, because then you have everything working together in one unit. But if you have them in separate cameras, then it's going to be a lot more post-processing that you have to work with. We use the Zenmuse X-T2. It takes a 4K video right next to our thermal video, and that allows us to be able to do quite a bit of groundwater research that we've been working on. There are also drones out there like the Phantom series where they actually have multispectral cameras that are specific for that drone. So this is a Phantom agriculture drone that DJI came out with. And then they also have enterprise drones where they put a small thermal camera next to your other cameras, and you're able to pair the two if that's what you're needing to look for. So additional costs that a lot of people may not think about. The software and processing can be quite a bit. So specifically for flying the drone, you need to have a control software. So as you're flying the drone, you want to be able to see the video that you're creating. And so they're often free with the drone. So I know DJI, Evo, and even some third-party drones that you can get just at the supermarket, they have their own technology that allows you to watch video, do some basic functions, and they're free and they come with the drone. However, when we start looking at it for research, you're going to need third-party software. And that's to be able to get those grid flights, those nice clean lines that you can't do flying it by hand. And so some of those are going to be Drone Deploy, Lychee, Pix4D. They all have their own independent mapping software for you to be able to fly. And oftentimes to fly is still free. However, what is going to cost a lot of money is going to be your post-processing. So in order to interpret the data that you collected, in order to put together and stitch together all of the pictures that you just took, you're going to need a third-party software. And so Drone to Map, Pix4D, Drone Deploy, they're all really good softwares to be able to use. I've used all of them actually. It's just how much do you want to spend? When do you want to spend it? And what do you need it for? And so oftentimes I just need the Pix4D because it can give me the multispectral, the thermal, and the regular orthomosaic, and I can buy it on a monthly plan. So I can collect a lot of data, and then over the period of a month, I can process it all because I only bought the 1 month. I know Andrew has been really pushing for the Drone to Map because it's an Esri product, meaning if we all get together, we can use one drone to map, and the Conservation Commission can buy it, kind of like our Esri products that we use with GIS all together. There are pluses and minuses of each program, and I think it's something to talk about and talk to one another about what programs we're all using and why. Operations and maintenance. So typically a phone is going to be really hard to see a lot of the information that the drone is putting out. It's putting out a really clear picture, and sometimes it's really hard to fly just using a 5-inch screen. So are you going to use an iPad, a larger phone, and then are you going to use an iOS and an Android? So each one has different apps that work better as third-party software, and some of them work really well for the thing that you need it to, and then, you know, Apple may carry this one and then Android may carry this other. So what apps are you going to be looking for, and which one gives you the greatest versatility of those? Batteries and storage. I've had multiple batteries fail on me, and each battery can be up to $150 or even up to $300 to replace. And so when one battery cell fails, that's a large commitment of money and maintenance that has to go into this drone. What is really terrible, and thankfully this has not happened, is that I haven't dropped a battery. If you drop a battery, it's done. And so, you know, just a simple accident or even dropping your drone could be a multiple $100 fix. Continued licensing for software in the 107. As I said, that actually just came out that the 107 may not need those continued license costs, but your software will absolutely cost you money over time. And then technology obsolescence. This is one of the biggest pieces to this, right? So you're wanting to start right now, and the market is just full of variety and new technology coming out seemingly every month of brand new state-of-the-art, this can now do this drone technology. But when are you going to buy in? Because whenever you buy in, it's going to be obsolete at some point. So do you have enough uses? Do you have enough material to use it for that by the time it becomes obsolete, that's okay, because you've used it as the tool it was meant to be used for. We replace hammers, we replace computers, we replace all sorts of things in our just daily work because we use them as tools. But we don't think of them as being obsolete. We think of them as being used and serving their function. I think one of the greatest tragedies is when you have a tool like this and aren't able to use it. So don't be frightened by technology obsolescence. Use the tool, use the drone technology as the tool that it's meant to be. And by the time it's obsolete, then you will have had a whole plethora of reasons to keep buying into this technology. So what are you going to use it for? Do you need one of these, you know, $5,000 drones that can carry something for 42 minutes, multiple cameras, has the RTK GPS accuracy up to less than a centimeter? Or are you going to fly something much smaller that's handmade, or smaller that's brand name? Do you want something that's going to have a larger sensor size? Are you going to go with something that's maybe a different brand than everyone else has, but it's still going to be a good drone? Are you going to go for a large drone because it can have a heavy payload? Or do you need the most state-of-the-art piece of technology in order to do your research? And so these are a lot of questions that you get to ask, and they're really exciting because you get to open up a whole new world of possibilities with drones that you maybe didn't have before. And you get to start asking questions: how can we use this to both promote ourselves and promote the landowners that we work with in ways that we haven't been able to in the past? And so that is my time right now. I'm going to pass it over to Brent to share a little bit about what he's been doing specifically with his drones at his conservation district.
Hey Seth, this is Jan. Just real quick before we switch to Brent, I do have a couple of questions in the box here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so we had one question about the 107. Do you have to retake the 107 test at the 2-year mark?
So as of right now, yes. So I've taken it twice. I've retaken it twice. The first time it's 60 questions. The second time and every time subsequent, it's 40 questions. But it's the same information. It's going to be information on weather and aeronautical terminology, how to read maps, how to read airport ledgers. And what I understand, and it's going to be brand new, is that to reoccur and to re-up your license every 2 years, that may be free now on the FAA website. And so that was just something that came out in the most recent report, that they were going to move toward that in order to make it more, as you renew, you have to know the new laws and the new rules, which totally makes sense to me. But I don't know what that looks like because they haven't done it yet. So I know that things are changing, but I also know the way that things have been. So stay tuned.
Okay, great, thank you. And then we have another question here. Can a multispectral lens be used to map and or quantify submerged aquatic plants from a drone?
Ooh, submerged aquatic plants. You know, what's interesting is I would probably have to try and find a research article to show that that has been done. These are all passive sensors, meaning that they rely on the sunlight to bounce off of the material on the ground to give you the reflectance that comes up. And I don't know how water interacts with that and how much water can, how much of that passive light can both penetrate the water, but then also be reflected back up into the drone sensor. And so that is something that I don't know the answer to, but it would be very interesting to try and find out in literature if someone has done that.
Okay, yeah, and just a quick follow-up, or algae blooms on the surface for that matter?
I think what you would be able to tell is presence, not presence, more than depth, because the whole idea is that you're able to read the chlorophyll content of a surface. And so, you know, if it's reading really high concentrations, that may just be because it's higher to the surface versus presence, not presence. Yeah, I don't know. That would be a great question. I've used it mostly on dryland crops, so that would be a great question to see how aquatic research has used it.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. That's all I see in the question box for now. So
Perfect.
Brent, I'm going to turn it over to you, make you the presenter. You should be able to have controls now.
All right, can you hear me and can you see my screen?
Yes, both, thank you.
All right, as Seth said, I'm Brent Dixon. I'm with the Kittitas County Conservation District. I'm just going to run through real quick of what I've been using our drone for here at the district. So to start with, we, as a district, was able to fund our drone program back in 2019. There was a drought declared for our watershed, so we were able to apply drought-related kind of projects, and we included drone in one of our applications. So the money came through Department of Ecology, back through the commission, straight to us. I was also able to go to our VSP work group and ask for some money to purchase our multispectral camera. So my current setup is just a Matrice 200 version 2. It's got a purchased the Thermal FLIR XT2 camera with it, and then this past year got the MicroSense Red Edge camera. When purchasing the whole thing, one of our goals was to be able to fly for a good chunk of the day. So we also got 8 8 sets of batteries for it. For this drone, it takes 2 batteries to operate. So our main applications for this is, since it was drought related, we were doing a lot of thermal imaging. That included thermal mapping, project documentation, ortho mapping, and just starting to get into the plant health side. So on this screen, we have it's same pivot from 3 different angles. 90% of the job right now that I'm using the drone for is looking at the irrigation side. In this case, I'm able to do live video. I have a small TV I can take with me, plug it in, and the farmer or producer is able to view what I see at the same time. In this case, the 3 wheel towers closest to the center of the pivot we were able to detect sprinkler nozzles that were partially cracked and leaking. And the dark purple is wetter spots, and so that was just showing the producer where he was having an issue. In this case, we're just looking at another pivot real quick, and we found partially clogged nozzles. On the right side of the screen, there's little orange fingerlings in between the dark purple. The brighter colors in this picture shows that it's drier. And so if you did a visual view, you would see the sprinkler working. And so in most cases, people just drive by, think it's okay. But once we start looking at the thermal, you realize there's an issue. And we were able to save the guy from having a crop failure in a swath in the pivot zone. So this was actually one of my first pictures I got with the thermal camera. The more I look at it, the more information I find in it. The first thing I was looking at was in the lower half of the screen, or in the picture, is the dark purple is wet. So the farmer is moving his water from right to left, and on the right side, you can see just lines running down the screen a little bit. That's just a leaking ditch. But the more I looked at it in the upper part of the picture, it's a gated pipe field with real irrigation, and it's a hay field that was getting ready to get cut. The hired man was supposed to make sure all the gates were shut off, but he clearly missed one gate or a couple gates, so we had water running down the whole field. And then the other part in that upper field again is there's actually a clogged drain. The producer knew about it, but he didn't realize how bad it was. So after looking at it closer, we were able to detect it was about 3 or 4 acres worth of field that he lost due to this clogged drain. We're also using just the drone looking more for the irrigation water management plans. You're able to, between these 2 pictures, one's an ortho map and one's a thermal. The one on the right with the thermal map, you can actually look, you can see the lighter purple colors coming through, showing that the ground's actually absorbing the water pretty quick. And it was actually beneficial for the farmer to slow down his pivot to get more water application into the ground. This one, we still have a lot of real irrigation in our county. This is early spring of last year. The farmer was having issues getting water all the way down the field. So we came out, we flew the project, and then we went out a couple more times. And what was determined was, due to it being so early in the season, the water table in that field wasn't high enough yet. So every time they watered, they were able to actually get their water evenly distributed across their field. The project or request I'm getting more and more of is, can we detect drains in these fields? this is the first time where I've actually dove in, did do some research, and try to figure out the best way to detect drain issues. Let's see, this image, I flipped the color scheme around, so the lighter color is wetter, and the darker color is actually wetter or drier. And so what's happening is in the middle of the field, there's a slight line, which is actually the drain line. And right in the middle, you can sort of see some wheel tracks and some hay rows that's wet. And that is where the drain has actually plugged up. I flew this multiple times, made a couple maps, and then with the maps, I was actually able to go out and flag the area for the producer, and we were able to get within, a foot of where the actual drain was having an issue. The springs will be going out, digging up the drain, and replacing the clogged areas. The other main thing we're doing lately is ortho mapping. In this case, it was pretty quick. Producer put a new pivot onto a field. In the upper left is the Google Earth image. It was a hay field and partially pasture ground. But with the pivot, he was able to turn part of the pasture ground into hay field. And so he just needed updated acres for each field. It was pretty simple. I did this project in Drone Deploy. And Drone Deploy, you can actually draw in their program, calculate acres, or you can export it out and put it into ArcMap. So detailed mapping with this is pretty nice. In the upper right, it's a Google Earth imagery, and then in the lower corner is a map I made with the drone. And as you start zooming in, you can actually start seeing the actual leaves themselves. I think I flew this at about 200 feet above ground, and then you can also see all the wheel tracks in the field. With just the mapping program, I was able to measure and then go physically out in the field to use a tape measure, and I was within 2-3 inches of accuracy just on this flight. So depending on your applications, you can easily use this to be real accurate and real detailed in your programs. So the plant health, just getting into it, had a producer call up, had questions or concerns about one of his fields, went out, flew it. You couldn't really tell by eyesight that there was an issue, but it turned out, so the green is good, red is bad for plant health. And what we determined what was the issue is when you had a fertilizer buggy out there, it clogged, the nozzles clogged up on it, and it wasn't putting out the input that it says it was. Luckily, we were able to do this a couple weeks after fertilizing, so we were early enough in the season where the fertilizer company was able to come back and correct the mistake. Then also doing real quick with the ortho mapping, some determining new seeding and its germination on it. This was one of the earlier projects I did. One of the mistakes I made was I was flying too high and too fast, but it was still able to give us enough detail to determine where, what seeds germinated and which ones, which part of the field is still having issues. The lighter gray is clearly the part that needed to be reseeded, and so the producer was able to go out and reseed without an issue. We had a hard frost in the spring, so it terminated part of the crop. One thing I started learning with the thermal that wasn't initially planned was I can also ID just general weeds in hay fields or wheat fields. In this case, the real dark purple colors are weeds in the field. It was just sort of one thing I knew I could potentially do, but I didn't initially have a desire to learn it exactly at the beginning. But once I started flying and was able to start IDing things, it became pretty evident on and it became really easy to be able to determine this. So like Seth, we use our drone a lot for just project documentation. This is just a project from a year ago. Be able to do it before, completed. We do video of all our projects as well. We've been doing a little bit more of project videos, summary videos for our funding sponsors. It's the same project, just doing 2 ortho maps. The one on the left is before, and the one on the right is an after. And then our county is just getting into the cover crops. So it's one of our first ones in a few years that I've done cover crops and with grazing. So I started doing documentation on the different stages of it. And then this spring, the producer's doing another cover crop. So we're going out looking at the plant health on that. And then looking at plant health of when he starts to put in a new hay crop. Again, just going with some forestry documentation of just different firewise projects we do throughout the year. And then I was lucky enough, a couple months after I got the drone, was a prescribed burn was planned in our county. I was asked to come out and document it. Since it was prescribed and planned, we didn't have to worry about other aircrafts coming and fight the fire. And so I was able to document and then get some pretty nice videos of trees going up in flames, and then I was also being used to look to make sure there's no pedestrians or hikers coming into the area with the thermal and do a quick flight around. One thing I've sort of started looking at is just livestock health. I know there's a ton of research out there on this. And in this case, there is a couple cattle out there that are becoming bright orange to yellow, indicating they are potentially running a fever. The problem with my current drone setup is it's a loud drone, and the cattle don't appreciate you hovering around them too long without them starting to move. So I wasn't able to do much with it, but this may be something we look more into going into the future. So I'll just quickly go over some of the lessons learned. Seth was initially one of the guys I spoke with on getting set up, so he was great with information for myself. And he's already touched on some of these, but the goals, know what your end result wants to be. I had a pretty good idea of what we're trying to do with the drought, and then from there, just learning everything I could. The camera, I went back and forth if just a regular camera and then a multispectral camera was good enough, or would live thermal help. And then, like he said, knowing the cost and your programs. I don't know if you've had this issue, Seth, but I couldn't use Pix 4D with my ST2 camera. It says it's not supported. But that's just one thing to know is what kind of camera do you have, what do you need, and will these programs support it. One big thing I've learned is to use the checklist. I had a checklist created at the beginning. I thought mentally I had a good one, physically I had a good one, but early on I wasn't using it every time. But there's a few times it caught me where I forgot my I forgot my iPad or my Android device in the office, so I had to run back and get it because it was sitting on the charger, or my card to take the pictures. And then one thing I know that helped me was knowing my airspace. In my county, I'm lucky. I don't really have many regulations or spots I can't fly, but it was one where I had people question why I'm flying in this spot. They claim I couldn't, but knowing the rules, I knew I was in the right. And then depending on your kind of projects, for like me in the thermal, knowing the time of day and what I'm trying to get out of the data is real useful. How many batteries I need, how long it's going to take me to fly so many acres on my mapping. And then I ran into an issue where my keeping great records helped me. I had a battery go bad on me, and it was a week before my warranty was going to expire, but I was able to prove all my documents and my records, and the company was able to, they honored the warranty for it. So future use, real quick, looking more into the plant health, just on crops. We've had some interest in guys looking at maybe if we can figure out the best time to cut according to the multispectral camera and the plant health. So we got a couple fields set up. We're going to fly it every week, and then once it gets close to harvest time, we'll fly it every other day to a day. We'll look more at the forestry side on stand health and plant density. And as we are getting more and more riparian plantings, we'll do more and more monitoring on those, and planning to use the multispectral camera and just ortho mapping to be able to document that. I had a little bit of interest in maybe doing some more 3D modeling of our project. I'm going to be looking into that. I'm not sure how well it's going to work for us. If there's even enough need or use for it. One thing I've been asked by Fish and Wildlife is being able to do red spawning surveys or regular fish surveys. We went out this fall, tested it out. It looks like it should work. It'll probably work better for us on our larger rivers versus our smaller streams, just with the vegetation in the way. And then if we are able to and find money for it, we'd like to get into the LiDAR to help with some of our construction projects and field service. So that's all. That's right now. That's all we're doing for using the drones for the districts. And if you guys have any questions later on, feel free to reach out to me. But that's all I have.
Great, thank you, Brent. You guys are doing a lot of stuff with your drone. That's pretty cool. We did have one question here in the box. What's the metric that you use to differentiate weeds from crops? Are you looking at perennial crops like hay or annual crops like wheat?
Both. Mostly it's in hay. So just because the thermal is looking at just temperature, ground temperature, surface temperature. So it's sort of like getting your eyes, just looking at the eye test, trying to figure out. You have to do some field truthing. So I've walked the fields after I've flown them to see what's on the ground, just doing a little field truthing with it versus others. But really, you just have to know what you're looking at. Because I've ran into the issue where I've flown the fields and I've looked at the map and it looks like it's a dry spot. Actually went out in the field and it's standing water that because it was in the middle of summer, the temperature raised and was warmer than the rest of the hay crop.
Okay, thank you. Just a reminder, you can type your questions into the question box, or if you just want to ask it directly, feel free to use that little hand icon to raise your hand, and I can unmute you. And Seth, I'm going to turn the presentation back over to you. I think you said you had some contact info you could show everybody. Yeah, so these three guys, if you're looking to get your own drone program started. And again, yeah, questions can go in the box or you can raise your hand. And I can just unmute you and you can ask directly if that's easier for you. I'm not seeing any other questions come in yet. Seth or Brent or Andrew, any final thoughts for us or things to consider?
Yeah, I would Yeah, I would say definitely reach out to one of us if you have any questions or even just to bounce some ideas off. I mean, I remember when Brent was looking into the drone program and he had done all of his research, but even just to, talk it through and figure out why you're wanting to do what you do, and then to have someone who's already done it, or at least a part of it. Sometimes it just feels good to have that confirmation from someone else who has already started flying and already taken the tests and bought the drones and already kind of purchased those pieces to know that it's okay and that you're on the right track. And so sometimes even just to get a second opinion or to bounce an idea off, feel free to reach out. We love to talk about these things. They're a really fun piece of our job, as well as a really valuable tool that we have found works for our conservation district, and not only benefits the conservation district, but I know a lot of landowners who have benefited from being able to use the material that we've collected as promotional material for even their own social media accounts and yeah, public presence.
Okay, great. I have a couple of questions in here. One just comment. This was really eye-opening and incredibly helpful, so thank you all for presenting. That's great. And then we have a question. Besides the initial cost of equipment, software, and licensing, what other costs should we budget for to start a drone program at our district? Who wants to field that one?
Brent, go for it.
I'll go ahead, Seth. So I haven't really had to do a lot of extra maintenance yet on my maintenance plan. I don't know. Besides the programs to process the data, the only thing I've really bought is extra batteries and then new propellers that I replace every so many months or year, depending on the use. But there's not a ton of, for me, extra expense yet. But I know, in a few years, potentially getting new cameras or potentially another drone for another application is probably what we're looking at for costs.
I think the unexpected cost is going to be in time, because the learning curve to know the information, to research everything, to buy it, to finally using it, to processing it, that all takes just a lot of time. And an hour here, an hour there may not seem like a lot, but over time, that can actually add up to quite a large budget. And so, especially if you have more than one person working on it. And so I would probably say time is probably one of the biggest inputs of financial investment that you have to be ready for, to be able to be really comfortable with both your flying as well as your processing.
And there's a follow-up question there. What's the life expectancy of a working drone? Do you wear it out or does it become obsolete first?
That's a great question. I have both neither. I have not run mine into the ground yet, but most of the time it won't wear out from a propeller point of view. Those propellers last forever. I have run into some obsolescence in the iPad that I bought. Drone Deploy no longer supports the version of iPad that I have, so I might have to be looking into getting a new one of those soon. And then just over time, I've had to replace one of the wires in my camera, and so I think that just goes into some operation maintenance. But again, we've had ours for 4 years and they're still running well. And I think you're more likely to accidentally drop it or crash it than it is for it to just fail.
Okay, great, thank you. I just want to take a minute here. It is 2 o'clock, so I just want to acknowledge that this is kind of the end of our scheduled program, though I do think we have a couple more questions in here, and I think our presenters are able to hang on and keep answering a few questions. But if you need to leave now, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll hope to see you at the next CTD webinar. But I will go ahead and just take a couple more questions here. John, you had your hand up. It looks like it might have been up for a while, so I'm going to call on you. You can unmute yourself if you still have a question.
Yeah, thank you. Hey guys, John Roos here with Grant County Conservation District. I've been flying a parrot bluegrass fields with Pix4D post-processing for over half a year now, and really excited about this part of our industry, and really hope that all districts can get in on this in the future. And thank you, Seth, for mentioning that sometimes it's good to just talk over things. Honestly, we don't have all the questions sometimes, but just to get into it. In my instance right now is flying over varied terrain, like a cliff face over 400 feet. I've been talking with Brent a little bit about this, but I'm wondering your thoughts on which drones or software will change drones' altitude to keep a steady 400 feet above ground level as the terrain goes up, rather than just 400 feet above the landing pad. I've done some research on my own, but I'm just wondering any personal experiences on having it keep with the terrain as it changes.
Yeah. So as of right now, the main technology that I know of that works with terrain, one, you always have to be from your highest point. Because there is the altimeter and barometer in the drone will not often allow you to go over 400 feet from your starting point. So you have to start on the cliff and can drop down. The other piece to that is Drone Deploy, specifically on the iOS software, has a single toggle button in the advanced settings that says terrain awareness. And that terrain awareness is accurate, I believe, up to 10 meters. Maybe it's 20 meters, but it should be going off of Apple Maps and using Apple Maps digital elevation model or digital surface model. And it does fly according to your landscape. And so I would check that out. So that's Drone Deploy's iOS app, and then that's in the advanced settings.
Thank you. It's a fun project. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'd love to hear more about it.
Absolutely. We all got to have a fly day too one of these days here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. I have another question here. Is drone insurance something to consider?
Oh yeah. I don't know about you, Brent, but I know that just because the cameras are so expensive that if the drone were to crash, the cameras would essentially become useless and probably break. So I know that through just the general insurance provider for Spokane Conservation District, they have the drones insured as well. And so I think that's actually in most insurance providers these days, and that's something to talk to your HR or insurance personnel at the district about.
We're in the same boat. Our general policy covers our drones. That was my first question before I took off, is are we covered?
Great, thank you. Mark, you have your hand up. I'm going to unmute you so you can unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, I was just real quick on the third-party software. So just, I guess it's more for Andrew. What does it look like for us getting some form of shared post-processing on the software? Because that's kind of the big stickler we have. We've already done some forestry mapping, photogrammic, and getting 3D modeling, as well as some of the modeling we've done along the river out here at the Skook River. But we're finding that that's the big sticker for us right now, the big sticker price.
So the license for Drone to Map, which is the Esri product for post-processing, is $1,400 a year. And that license can be moved around by me to any one of our users. So if you needed it, I could just say, okay, this person's done with it, I can move it over. But nobody's jumped at purchasing that $1,400 a year subscription. The commission has yet to say yes to purchasing it, and right now they're in scramble mode for money right now because of COVID, so they're not going to pay for it this year either. But if enough districts come together, or one district can put it into their grant, all districts can use it. But someone's got to pay for that.
So Andrew, that would be like a use it one at a time type of thing. Like I check it
Yes.
out from you and then someone else checks it out, but we couldn't use it all at the same time. Is that what I'm?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, if anyone wants to write that in, let us know. We can all take turns with it. I have another question here for you, Brent. What was the cost of your drone setup?
So just the drone and the thermal camera was about a little over $20,000, and I think by the time I had my second camera and all my batteries, and then I went to a training, and we're looking over $30,000.
Wow. That's a lot. But
Seth?
you were able to write it all into those grants and that you mentioned, Brent?
Yeah. I got told shoot for the moon, and so I shot for the moon.
What's a low end to get into it? A Mavic 3 costs $1,000, $2,000.
Oh, I would say if you're going to just want to start with something, I think DJI is a great product to start with because it has the built-in altimeter and barometer with a GPS, so it holds its position. One of the better, cheaper versions are the Mavic Pro Air. I believe it's the Mavic Pro Air is the one of the most latest that came out. It's very small, and I believe it's about $350.
I would say
If you're looking for like if you're looking at the thermal side, you can get a DJI one for about $6,000 with the thermal camera on it. I think I was looking at, but there is limitations on that one.
I would even say if you're just looking for a drone to get started, I'm used to DJI, so I've been actually asking around, and one of the people who works a lot with DJI that I was talking to was talking about that Evo series, the EVO2, and that's an American-made company. So that is all American-made drone parts. But then the other piece that's kind of attractive about it is that all of their servers are out in Texas. So the servers aren't in China, the servers are in Texas, they're in the US. So I don't know, I've heard that those are great drones to start with as well. And those are going to be as comparable to your Mavic series by DJI. The only downside to them that I can see would be the rolling shutter. If you're wanting to use it for mapping, then make sure that you get a mechanical shutter drone.
I would also add, make sure that whatever drone you do buy works with the flight software that you want to use. Because a few people have bought like the older DJIs and they found out, oh, this doesn't work for mapping for flight software. So they would have to actually run the flight by hand instead of going on a grid.
Ooh.
And that does not work, I have found out.
Okay, well, great. Thank you, guys. I'm not seeing any more hands raised or questions right now, but we do have the contact information, and sounds like always open to a conversation if you are trying to get something going. So thanks again for all of our presenters here for being available, and thanks everyone for hanging out a few more minutes here to get some of these questions answered. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and finish this up, and hopefully see you guys at the next CTD webinar, Thursday, February 18th. So thank you guys, and see you next time.
Perfect. Thank you.